All right, good afternoon. I've discovered that as I get older, and getting into being the twilight of probably of my days, that for lack of better words, I think I'm starting to, this is no joke either. I think I'm starting to struggle with a disease, and that disease is known as doofus. And again, I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm really not. Today must be the third time in the last 6 or 7 weeks that in the afternoon class, I forgot to turn the tape on. I've set everything up. All right, Grant, who was my student watching, he could hear me, he could see everything, but I never started the tape. So I'm going to redo it right now, and I'm going to build the Contact Manager app. Now, what I want you to understand as I get rid of this thing that said, oh, where is it? All right. Your homework for Sunday, 9/10/23 is, in fact, just so you know, it's the AWD1115 homework. All right. So your homework for this weekend is number 1, written tests for chapters 4 and 5. And I'll put an asterisk here, meaning if you didn't do the ones for 1, 2, and 3, get your butt in gear and get those in as well. All right. Number 2, project 4-1, build the Contact Manager app. Number 3, project 5-1, which is debug the tip calculator app. All right. Now, not case study 3-1 or case study 4-1. We will do these next Monday. Okay, so 2 asterisks there. Doing those next Monday. Finally, the test for chapters 4 and 5 moved from Monday, 9/11 to Tuesday, 9/12. And I'll go back to that again before we finish up today. I am going to do this. This is what I did today. I'm going to redo it right now. That is build the Contact Manager app. I still expect you to do this. It is very similar in nature to the app that we did the other day. All right, that being the movie list app. What's different? Well, rather than movie list, it's a contact manager. And you'll notice on our main page, we don't have edit and delete on here. But we are going to make hyperlinks out of the first name and the last name. So this shows everything. This is the information about all our contacts. And if I click, for example, Dolores or Del Rio, this is what comes up. All right. When we add somebody to the database, the date and time they're added will be shown. This organization is optional. Okay. We will again share the same user interface for both adding a new contact or editing a contact. So we'll be working with ViewBag to make sure either the word add is there on the screen or the word edit. And if it's an add, we want the button to say add. And if it's an edit, we want the button to say edit. Finally, our delete will be very similar in nature to what we did before. Here's our specs. When the app starts, it should display a list of contacts and a link to add a contact. So again, there's our list of contacts. There's our link to add a contact. If the user clicks the first name or the last name of a contact, the app should display the detail page for that contact. I already showed you that. The detail page should include buttons that allow the user to add, to edit, or delete the contact. So in other words, okay, edit the contact. I don't see one that says delete. All right, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see one in there that says delete. Add, cancel, edit, cancel. All right, but we'll look at that in just a bit. Again, the add and edit pages should use the same view. This view should include a drop-down for all category values. The add and edit pages should not include the date added field because that's going to be filled in by code. If the user enters invalid data in the add or edit page, the app should display a summary of validation errors. Here are those requirements. All right, first name, last name, phone, email, and category ID are required. Organization is optional. What that means is we will have a required parameter or required decorator for first name, last name, phone, email, and category ID. We will not have one for organization. Since the category ID is an int, we can't use the required attribute with it, but we can use a range attribute. There will be 4 different categories, but we'll set it up to like that we can have maybe 100. All right, next, if the user clicks the cancel button, the app should go back to the home page. If the user clicks the cancel button on the edit page, or that's okay, if they're on the add page, it should go back to the home page. If they're on the edit page, it should go to the details page for that contact. The domain model, or in our models folder, we should have a class for contacts and another one for categories. The contact class should have a foreign key that relates it to the category class and a read-only property that contains a slug for the first and last name to give them user-friendly URLs. We're going to use EF code first, as we have been doing. We will include the seed data that's here. All right. We will use a razor layout to store HTML head and body elements. All right. We will use Bootstrap, and if necessary, we'll override the Bootstrap class if we have to, need to, want to, with our own CSS. All right. We'll use the default route with an additional route segment that allows this slug. And we'll make the app URLs lowercase with a trailing slash on the end. So with that said, let's start building. All right, I have created an empty folder here called Contact MGR, and I believe that once I bring this up, and this is what way I'm going to do it right now, that is, I'm going to start Microsoft Visual Studio. I'm going to create a new project. I am going to use the ASP.NET Core Web App Model View Controller. I will call this Contact MGR here. I will, and here, and I will put it in a folder on my desktop, again called Contact MGR. All right, click Next. I will double check this is Net 7. We don't have to configure. We will eventually use HTTPS, but not yet, and click Create. As you know, this gives us basically, for lack of better words, the equivalent of our template files. All right. And let's just get going. I'm not going to run it or anything. So let's start by coming into our models folder, add. Let's add a new class that we will call contact. All right, so this new class will be contact, not contract, contact.cs. And there it is. I'm going to start by going up to the top and do a using system dot component model dot data annotations. That'll allow us to put our required in there without it complaining. All right, we'll start with our primary key. So let's spell that correctly. All right, so this will be a public int contact ID with a get set. All right, next, we will have in there as a required attribute with an error message that is equal to please enter contact first name. All right, and a public string first name, again with our get set. We can set that equal to string.empty so we don't get that warning message right there. All right, then we're going to do another one right away, but this is going to be last name. So far we've got our primary key, which is our contact ID, our first name and our last name. Let's go below that and let's add again, but this will be phone number. So again, we'll just call this phone. All right, and below that, let's add another one. And this is going to be email. So as of right now, and we're not finished, but as of right now, we have one integer field, and that is our primary key of contact ID, followed by 4 string fields. One for the first name, one for the last name, one for the phone number, and one for the email address. And everything so far is mandatory. Okay. All right. The next thing we were told in there is we could have an organization, but that was not required. So I'm going to say public string organization with again a get and a set. And again with a string empty. But I'm not going to put a required in front of it because we were told it was not required. All right. Next, we're going to have a date time. That's called date added. That's the date that the contact was added to our database. All right. And again, that will also be a get set. It will not be required, and it will be filled in for us using code. All right. Couple more things we want in here. We need a foreign key. All right. And we will have a range for that. That's going to be that category ID. So the range will be 1 to 100. All right, so please enter a category. How about, what did we say up here? We said contact category, I guess would make sense. I'm just trying to be very consistent with my messages. That's all. All right, so this will be public int category ID with, again, a get set. Now, we also want to link to the other table, but we haven't created the other table yet. So we're going to get an error right now. All right. And that's what it's telling us. It's letting us know, hey, I have no idea what this category is. So we're going to add that in just a moment. Finally, we're going to add this read-only property. It's more like a method. It's this slug. And again, this says in the first name, replace any blank spaces with dashes and make sure that when we're done, that we want to do a to lower on there because it's nice when URLs are all lowercase. All right, and we will add to that a dash plus the last name. In the same way we did it as we did the other one. All right, so I'm going to move this over so they line up a little bit. All right, now I'm getting that error right now. We are done with this one, but I'm getting the error because it doesn't have any clue as to what category is. So I'm going to do a file, save all right here. All right, and I'm going to go back to my models and I'm going to add another class, and that class will be called category.cs. There it is. And we don't have to worry in here about setting much of anything up. It's going to be real simple. We'll have the primary key. So public int category ID with a get set and a public string with a name, just like that. We could set equal to string empty. That's fine. Now what you should notice is after I save this and I go back to my contact, that error is now gone. Okay. So file, save all. And now I can close both of these. So far I've come in, I created the project. And after I created the project, I came in, let me double check and make sure I'm taping. Recording has started, good. Okay. So we came in and we added two domain models, one called contact.cs and one called category.cs. So with that done, let's go in and let's add our contact context. Remember that a context file like this, first of all, you have to spell it right. But a file like this is going to allow us, it's going to allow us to be able to have the database and our C# program talk with one another. Now, if I start what I want to do at the top, and I'm going to get an error here, I want to put in using Microsoft dot, and what I want here is Entity Framework Core. It's not listed there. I can type it in, but I get an error message. All right, because the system doesn't know about it. So before I do this one, I want to go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. And I want to come in here right now. There's nothing installed. So I'm going to come in here and type in Microsoft dot entity framework core and hit enter. Okay, now it says no packages found, which probably means I typed in something incorrectly. Dot core, still nothing found. All right. I don't know why it's not finding anything, but it's okay. What we want is Microsoft.entityframeworkcore.tools. Oh, it's because we're in installed. Browse. Now there's tools. We want that one. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to click on the project button here, and I'm going to tell it to install and accept. Next, we want to do the SQL server. So it's the same thing, but instead of core tools, we want core SQL server. And there it is. Again, it's already highlighted there. So I'm going to click install and accept. So both of those should now be added. All right. I can go to installed and it only shows one. Sometimes it does that. All right. So maybe it only put in one. I don't know. So I like to close this and then reopen it and then go back to installed, and they're both there. So I should be good to go now. All right, so I'm now in my context class. Now when I type in using Microsoft dot, one of the things that's in there is Entity Framework Core. All right, so I'm good to go as far as that goes. Plus, anytime you create a context class, it is automatically a child of DB context. That's just one of those rules, so to speak, that we have to follow. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a constructor for this. So public context, context, but we have to add a bunch of junk. So it's DB context options. It's all this junk. And I like to put it on 2 lines so you can read all of it. Okay. Basically what it's saying is if there are any options that are going to be included here, they must be handled by the parent class, which again is DB context. So we're done with that. Now we have to create the DB sets. How do I do that? Public DB set. First one will be contacts. And the second one will be categories. And you'll notice that it's smart enough that it pluralized and it changed the spelling to GORIES instead of like YS. All right, now we can add our seed data. And not that's a big thing one way or the other, but let's put these in alphabetic order. Categories comes before contacts. All right, now let's add the seed data. All righty. So the first one is pretty simple. All right. And this is just the way we've got to do it. It's basically the code template for doing this. So we can say here, new category. We can put this if we want. We can put this on multiple lines and say category ID equal 1, category name equal family. And that's totally fine. What we just did there was fine. All right, and it's not category name, it's just name. That's why we got the error. And after each one of these, we put a comma, except for the last one. All right, so I'm going to put in 4 of these. So the second one will be number 2. Whoops, number 2. Number 2. The third one will be number 3. And the last one will be number 4. All right. So I've got those. Don't worry, these errors are all going to go away in just a second. This name is going to be friend. Okay. The next one here, this is going to be work. And the last one will be other. Now let's see if we can investigate these errors. We don't need that. All right. We left a statement out of here. We left a line out. And that line goes right here. And it says model builder dot entity category dot has data. All right. And we have to put that ending parenthesis way at the end of our stuff here. All right. Now, in just a minute, these errors are all going to be gone. Okay. So first, let's start by moving all this stuff over there. All right. So we've got new category, category ID equal 1, and name equal family. That looks good. So what doesn't it like here? It says it's expecting a parenthesis. All right. New category, and then in parens or in curlies, category ID equal 1, name equal family. Should be correct. All right. Then we need to do here another new category. All right. And we need to do here another new category. And finally, here we need to do one last new category. And you'll notice now all of our errors are now gone. So taking this from the top, we added our using Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. We inherited from DB context. We wrote a constructor. We created our two DB sets. And then we're adding our seed data. We're not done yet. We've only added seed data into one of the tables. Now, if it's easier for you to read, we could have done this one like this. Most people find that easier to read. All right. Now the next one has got 5 fields. There's 7 fields, I think. So it's a lot harder to fit all that on one line. But let's take these and put each one of them on its own line. Again, whether you put it on one line or on multiple lines is 100% your choice. Just wanted to show you both. All right. On the next one, I will put each thing on its own line. All right. So there's our first set. When we're done with this one, we need to, at the bottom, put a semicolon. So now there's no errors. All right. There are no errors, but I have to do this again because this is the seed data. So this is seed data for the categories table. All right, but now we need to also come in fact, let me grab both of these. In fact, I'll grab all three of these lines. Now we also need to go in and grab the seed data for the contacts table. So this will now be contacts, contact. This will be new contact. And these will be put over multiple lines. All right. Don't worry, we'll fix it all up, pretty it all up in just a moment. All right, so this is now the seed data for our second table. There's only 3 records in here, so it's not bad. All right, so let's put it in. Don't know what happened, but no idea. Lost my cursor, but let's put it back. There we go. So the contact ID will be equal to 1. The first name will be equal to Mary Ellen. The last name will be equal to Walton. The phone number, remember these are all strings, will be equal to 555-123-4567. The email will be equal to Mary Ellen at yahoo.com. And we also need a category ID. And she will be family. So she'll be a 1 up from up above. So that'll be equal to 1. And finally, we need that date added. And that's going to be equal to datetime.now. Just like that. So that's our first contact. Let's copy this twice. After the last one, we do not need a comma here, but we do need here our ending parenthesis with a semicolon. Now, we've got the first one, so let's put in our next 2 contacts. Contact 2 is Dolores Del Rio. All right. And her phone number is 555-987-6543. All right. Her email will be dolores@hotmail.com. Her category ID will be a 2. She will be a friend contact. And the date added will be date time now again. Finally, we'll have one more new contact. It'll be 3, and that will be Efren Herrera. His number is 555-456-7890. His email will be Efren at I didn't know there are still AOLs, but AOL.com. He will be a 3, meaning he is a work contact. All right. So that is everything. I'm not seeing any errors, which is always a good sign. So that is everything for my contact context file. Okay. So what do I want to do next? Well, I want to get ready to create my database. To do that, I'm going to have to add 2 more things in here. First, in my app settings.json file, after the allowed hosts, you may or may not remember this from the other day. All right, but we have to add this. I'm going to have to make a change to it, but it's okay. All right, we are adding a connection string. This is not movie context. That's what we did the other day. This is contact context. All right, and we are going to call our database contact MGR. I don't know if I already have a contact MGR, so let's look. If I do, I'll have to call it something else. There's a contact manager, but not a contact MGR. All right, so that's done. That's all we had to do with this file. So file, save all. And there's one more thing we have to do here. and that is to open up our program.cs file. And under this builder.services.add control with views, I want to do two things. First, I want to come in here and I want to, again, I'm going to steal this from what we did the other day. I want to add this. Now it's going to probably give me errors, and don't worry. Okay, it's not movie context we're using. It is context that we're using. Oops. And it's giving me an error because there's a using statement that it needs that I have not provided. So we're going to provide that. All right, if I put my mouse here, click, I need the using contact mgr.models. Now I have no errors. All right, so this was the other statement I had to put in. In addition, I want to go down to the bottom of my screen here, and this is my default route, and I want to add to this. All right, I want to add to this slug with a question mark, meaning that that is optional. All right, so that's what we're putting in here. So again, file, save all. Now I'm going to close this, and I am going to attempt to create my database right now. All right, how am I going to do that? Tools, NuGet Package Manager console, which brings up the console. And if you look in here, you will notice I do not have a folder in here that is named migrations. So I'm going to create a migration and then the database based off of that. All right. So I'm going to start in here and I'm going to say add hyphen migration. You give it a name, typically something like initial setup, and hit enter. All right, it started. It says it succeeded. And I now have a migrations folder here, and there it is with the initial setup in it. Now, that file, what that did was it created a file with two different methods in it. One called up, which allows us to update our database to add all this stuff to it, and one called down. So if I screwed up this migration and I wanted to remove it, I could type in remove hyphen migration. I don't want to do that. I want to update my database. So update hyphen database, hit enter. It started, it succeeded. It's adding all that information to it now, and it says it's done. So let's see if it worked. If it worked, then over here, and it doesn't show it yet, but when I refresh my database, I'll have a new database over here called Contact MGR. So let's see. So there's Contact MGR. If I open up the tables, I've got a migration history, which you should never touch. It's a system file, categories, and contacts. And if I look at categories and I look at the data, there are my four categories: family, friend, work, and other. And if I look at the data for contacts, I should have my three contacts. And there they are: Mary Ellen Walton, Dolores Del Rio, and Efren Herrera. So far, so good. Everything has been working. Okay, so that's where I am right now, approximately 40 minutes in. Okay, so we've done all that. Well, what do we do next? As always, it's up to us what we do next. All right, but I'm going to go into my controller, and right now I only have a home controller, and I'm going to clean that up and make it look the way I want it to look. I'm going to move my database that's here over, way the hay over. There we go. Now in here, We're not doing any logging where we're logging any of our results. So I can get rid of the diagnostics file. I can get rid of all the stuff in here that says logger, and I can get rid of this privacy stuff. And this is more logging stuff. So what I just did was I got rid of everything in my home controller except for what you see right here. I'm slimming it down, whatever you want to call it. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a context variable, which will allow me to do database stuff. So private context, and I will just call the thing context. And we will give it a get and a set. All right. Then I will create a constructor. So public home controller, it will take in one of these contexts, which I'll just call CTX. And I'll say context equals CTX. All right. So the only thing to do yet in here, the only thing to do is to set this up. This is incomplete the way it is. This will call the view that's in my views folder called index.cshtml, but it's not going to do anything. All right, we want to make it do something. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a couple lines up above this. Var contacts. We use var because we don't have a variable type here. Equals context dot contacts. And I like to put this, you can put it all on one line, but I like to separate it. Include, so we're telling it here to include what we want it to include is the category as well. All right. Don't worry. In fact, that should be contacts, not contracts. There's a start. All right, then include this. Okay. Dot order by. Why? Because we're going to put this in order. And we're going to put this in order based on C dot first name. And looks right now. I've got a few typos, but we're going to fix everything right now. Okay. All right. And then finally, we'll put in here a dot to list, which will allow us to print it out and have it look the way we want it to look. Finally, and we got to fix this error. All right. We want to return view and we want to put in there contacts. Not there. Right in here. Contacts. Okay. Now we're getting an error here and I don't know why, so we'll try to figure that out. So var contacts equal context dot contact dot include, and it says DB set here does not include a definition for include. Well, what are the fixes? Let's look. It says we need to put in a using statement. Okay, and let's put in that using statement. So using Microsoft, same one we used before, dot entity framework core. Once we put that in, our error is gone. All right, so now we have gone in, we have created from the start, we created a new project. Then in our models folder, we created a contact.cs model or class. Then we created a category.cs model or class. Then we created our contact context model so we could link this to our code. Now we've gone in and we have created in here. All right, we have our home controller right here. All right. And what we do next is up to us, but this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go into my views folder and I'm going to remove that privacy view because we removed all that privacy stuff we had. All right. And I'm going to go to index.cshtml, which is right here. All right. This is garbage. So I'm going to go and rewrite it right now and rewrite it and have it look the way I want it to look. And there'll be about 40 lines or so that we put in here. Now, you always start these with @model. And this one, it'll be one of different kinds of contacts. So it's going to be an IEnumerable of type contact. All right. Next, we're going to set our title. All right. Now, I'm going to put in a line and I'm going to go back and show you the specs and show you exactly what we're building right now. All right, so we're creating a hyperlink. This hyperlink that says add contact, if we go back to our specifications, that is this right here. This is the page we're working on right now. This is the page. All right. And what we're about to do is add these headings that are shown right here. Then we're going to use a for each loop to loop through and have it print out all the data that's in here. After we do that, we're going to run the program and see if our data shows. We won't be able to add yet. We have to make a bunch of changes, or I should say additions, before we can do that. So that's this line. Next, I'm going to create a table. We'll bootstrap it by saying class equals table, and we'll put a little top margin on it. All right, table start with a T head, and we will have 5 fields in here. And I know what the problem is, so I'm getting that error. We'll fix it in a minute. You may have already figured it out. The error that we're getting in here is because all of these must be in a row, and they're not in a row right now. So we're going to put them into a row. All right. Once we do that, what hopefully you noticed is all those errors went away. So this right here, this that you see highlighted in blue, that is, pardon me, that is this. That's what we just added, were those headings. Now we have to add the data. The data goes in what's called a T-body. It'll be about 20 lines or so that we type, maybe a couple more. And we have to make sure for the first name and the last name that they're hyperlinked. So we have to basically make them into links, as you can see right here. Again, then we can run the program and see if we do get our beginning data. It won't work totally yet, but we're building this incrementally to see if that part of it works. All right, so after our T head in a table comes a T body. And all of this will be inside of a for each loop. All right. And everything will be inside of a table row. All right. And this is where we're going to put those 5 fields. The first two, we got to do more work because we have to hyperlink them. So let's put them in. So this will be TD. That'll be the first field. This will be the second field. Again, those will take a little more work, but let's just throw in the other three. So there'll be the phone. There'll be the email. And there'll be the name. But the name is the category name. So we can't say contact dot name. There isn't any. But in the category table that we added earlier, in there is a name. Okay, so let's add these other two fields. None of these will work because it's calling something from a controller called contact. We haven't written that yet. We'll write it momentarily. Right, so there's everything so far. Doesn't like something in here, and I think it's because I didn't close this. All right, and the first name actually is what we want to put in here. There. Now the next one is the same. I just have to change first name to last name. So let me copy all this, paste it in here, and where it's got first name, I'm just going to make it last name. Now let's see if what we have in here so far indeed does work. All right, so file, save all, and I'm going to run it. We won't be able to add a record. We won't be able to insert. We won't be able to delete. I'll try them all, but I'll get errors. All right, so I just want to see if this comes up with our data. There it is. But you'll notice if I click add contact, it's not found. There's no page. If I click on one of these, not found, because there is no page. Or this, not found. We're going to make those next. But so far, it looks good. All right, looking good. So let's stop the run here. All right. And now let's go in and let's add another controller. All right, this will probably be about the longest thing that we'll type in here, but that's okay. So file, save all, and I'm going to close the index.cs HTML file, and I'm going to close the home controller.cs file. And I'm going to come back in and in my controllers here, I'm going to add a new controller. So right mouse click, add controller, and this will be a contact controller. So MVC controller empty, contact controller.cs. Okay? All controllers are children or inherit from controller. Okay? All right. Now, I'm sure one of the things that we're going to end up needing in here is going to be Entity Framework Core. There might be more. Who knows? All right. Just like we did before, we're going to create a private variable for our database context. All right. Oops, and I didn't put my get set in there, so let me do that. Okay, and we need a constructor. Okay, virtually the same thing we did in our last controller. The difference is this is exactly the same as what we did in there. But this is different because in the other one, instead of saying public contact controller, it said public home controller. All right. Excuse me. Okay. So now we got some methods that we have to write. Now, just to show you this, there is nothing that says when we do this, we need an index. In fact, we're not going to have one here. We're going to have here details. This is going to give us the details of a contact. So I'm going to say if our contact, this is one contact, that equals context dot contacts dot include that's what I want. I do want this, but I want that down on the next line. So let me hit enter here. So for the include here, oh, I hate this stuff that they put up in here all the time. So C dot category. All right. Dot first or default. There we go. In English, what this says, just so you're aware of it, I need to put the word contact in here. This is going to give us the details for a single contact. So if we highlight the first name or the last name of any of those three people, this is what's going to run. And it's going to say, okay, given the ID of the one that you just clicked on, check the database and see if there's a match. And if there is, return that. And that's what'll go into that view. Okay. All right, next. This will be our ad. So we're going to put in here HTTP get public iAction result ad. Now you may or may not remember, but one of the things that we said earlier was we wanted to use the same user interface for both allowing the user to add a new record and allowing the user to update an existing record. What's the difference between them? If you're adding a new record, that particular user interface, all the fields that are in there will be blank or empty because it's a new record. All right. Plus, there will be no contact ID associated with it until you actually save the record. On the other hand, if it's an edit, there will be information in all the fields, and there will be a contact ID. So in here, in this ad, we're going to say viewbag dot action equals add. The reason that we need this, viewbag dot action equal add. If I come back in here, notice how this says, where are we? Where are we? Come on. I think I missed something in my details before, so we'll look at that in a moment. All right. But if we're adding we need the word add there and the word add there. If we're editing, we need the word edit there and the word edit on our button. All right, now that I'm looking at this, I'm wondering if I missed something. I'm gonna go back very quickly. All right, we're coming right back to this, but I want to go to my details and I want to look at something in my details view. I'm sorry, in my index view here. Okay. This is all that stuff. All right. Let's look in our home controller here too. All right. Somehow I am missing the delete button. So I'm going to have to make sure that I'm showing that later. All right. And that'll be in a view that we bring up later. Somehow I missed that. All right. This and keep going with our contact controller. Right. So close that. And we're in the add routine. Okay. Now, what we want to do in here, these will be our categories. That'll be equal to context dot categories dot order by to list. And we will return view. Remember, we are sharing, so this will say edit, even though it's new. The way we know it's new is new contact. And that is how we will handle showing the add form for us. All right, so that's the add. What about the edit? We'll do that one next. It'll also be a get. All right, but to edit a record, we'll need to know that record's ID. All right, we need some way to show and know what that record is. So the first thing we did up here is we set this stuff, we set the view bag action, and then we went through and started looking for what we're looking for. Let's do that in here, but instead of add, this will be edit. All right, and again, we're going to iterate our way through here. Okay, but now what we want to do is we have to check for a match. And it's a single contact. Okay. So this is adding a new record. This is editing an existing record. All right. So you put that in there as a comment. Attempt to add new record. And we can put in another comment for the other one that says attempt to update existing record. Okay. All right. Now we've done, again, the same form is going to handle both a get for an add and a get for an edit. But now we need the post, and their two are going to share this post. So we'll have to have some way of letting the user know whether it's an add or whether it's an edit. How do we do that? If it's an add and we start filling in all the information until we click a submit button or something like that, until we do something, there is no ID, there's no contact ID associated with that record. So the contact ID is 0. On the other hand, if it's an update, there is, if it is an update, there already is an ID that's associated with it. Okay, so that's what we'll look at in just a second. So again, this will be a post. It will be a public action. It won't be a delete. It'll be an edit. And we can't say, like we did before, you can't say int ID. No, we're going to pass in the whole thing. Contact. Then string action. This is what I mentioned to you before. What we're saying is the contact that we're either attempting to add or edit, does it have a contact ID that's equal to 0? If it does, we know this is an add. If it does not, we know that it's an edit, just like that. All right. So if no contact ID, this is a new record. So in other words, it's an add. If is contact ID, this is an existing record update. We're not done yet. Now we have to validate all required fields have been filled in. Okay, so if model state dot is valid, okay, now we're going to check and see if it's an add in here or if it's an edit. We'll also put an else in here, which means that we skipped something that was supposed to be put in, we didn't, or we put something in incorrectly. So in here, if everything was hunky-dory, if the action that we did up above, right here, if that action was an add, all right, then we want to say, we want to fill in that date added, and that's equal to datetime.now. So just give us the current date and time. All right. And we want to get ready. We're not going to save it yet, but we want to get ready to save it. All right. But, so we need an else in here. Else, which means action was an edit. So if that's the case, we want to say context dot contacts dot update the contact. All right. Either way, whether it was an add or it was an edit, now we want to save the changes to the database. So context dot save changes. All right. And then we want to basically redirect to the home page. So there is a return, redirect, dot to action, index, and home page. Like that. That handles if everything was hunky-dory and it worked. What if it didn't work? All right. What if there was a problem? We did something wrong, whatever that wrong thing we did was. I'm just checking my time. Okay. All right. So in this else, The is valid above failed. So we're going to say viewbag dot action equals action. Viewbag dot categories equal context dot categories dot order by dot to list. All right, and finally, we're going to return back to where we want to go. All right, so that's everything. That is everything for our contact controller for the HTTP post on an edit. So what's left now are the deletes, and the deletes will have a get, an HTTP get, and an HTTP post. What the hell that's doing? But it doesn't like something in here, so let me just remove all of it. I think the problem is I'm still in this routine. There we go. Now I want to come down here and say HTTP get. Oh, goodness. Public iAction result delete. All right, so var, we want to delete a contact. All right, equals this. Dot include. Not the contact ID, the category. Dot first or default. Now we're going to check to see if the ID that was passed in was equal to an ID in the database. If it is, we return that contact. All right, that's the get right there. Finally, we have the post. This is just going to do the removal. Save it to the database. And return to the home page. Okay, taking this from the top. This is the longest thing probably that we've keyed in so far. All right. We come into the top. We add a private context variable, which allows us to do our database operations. All right. Then we have our constructor where we pass the context in. So now we can use it. Then we have this thing here. It's not a get, it's not a post. This is designed to show us the details. So when we click on the first name or a last name of one of our contacts, this will get their information for us. Here, this will show us the form so we can attempt to add a new record. Here is going to show us the form to allow us to update an existing record, and it's the same form. Either the form will be empty, totally empty, and if it is totally empty, that means it does not have, any fields, including a category, including a contact ID. And if it doesn't have that contact ID, all right, If it doesn't have that contact ID, then it's got to be a new record because the contact ID currently is equal to 0. If it's not 0, it's an edit. So that's what we do here. Whether it's an add or an edit, they share the same post method. Again, this is saying if there is no contact ID, it's an add. If there is a contact ID, it's an edit. So as I say here, we want to validate that all of the required fields have been filled in. If they have, this model state dot is valid will then return true. And if it does not, that means that one of our fields that we tried putting in failed, or we didn't put something in, or we put in the wrong data type. All right. If it did succeed, we want to check and see if it's an add to get ready to add the new record to the database. If it's not an add, we want to get it ready to update an existing record. All right. Then we call save changes to actually write these changes, either the new record to the database or the modified record to the database. Then we redirect or return home to our home page. All right, to our index page. If it fails, okay, we're just going to return them basically back to where they were. All right, and then finally, for the delete, and they're both here, everything's right here. If it's a get for the delete, if it's a get, all right, well, we have to search through and see if whatever ID we provided is in the database. So that's either going to return the matching one, the first, or null if it doesn't find a match. And then we pass that either null or that ID to our view. Okay, that's the get. The post says, now we're going to go in and we're going to remove that record that we said, yes, we want to remove. We're going to write it back to the database and redirect the user to the home page. All right. So those are the methods in our contact controller. Now, if we come here, if I do a file, save all, and I click this to run it, I'm still going to have problems. Because if I click add contact, it gives me an error and it says, hey, you don't have anything under a contact folder called edit. It wasn't found. If I try to update something, same thing. It's like, hey, you don't have a details. So we've got to add those next. All right. So we will add a details.cshtml, an edit.cshtml, and a delete.cshtml. That's what we're doing next. Let's stop our run. All right, let's close this file. And if you look in our views, we do not even have a folder in our views. We don't have a folder called contacts, so let's make one. So we will add a folder. The folder will be called contact, singular. All right. And now we have to start adding some stuff to this. That's the goal right now. So the first thing, again, we will add is, and what we have to add here, just so you know, we have to add details. We have to add, well, anything that's got a post by it, add it. And we have to add delete. All right, that's our next goal here. Okay, so let's start by coming into contact, add, view, razor view empty, and this will be edit.cshtml. This is garbage that it gives you by default, so we're removing that. And we'll put in our own lines ourselves. There's around 50 lines here. This is details, so it's going to give you the details for a single contact. That's why we're doing it like that. All right, this is going to be a big unordered list. All right. This will be name. It'll be the first name and a space, and then the last name. Now, I'm going to do some copying here and then just change some stuff around. All right, so after the name, we're going to have the phone number. And after the phone number, I'm again going to just copy. We're going to have the email. All right. Now with the email, I am going to pad this out a little bit. So I'm going to come in and say class equal W for width 10, just so it pads out and it looks a little bit nicer because emails are longer. All right. Then let's bring in another one here. All right. So after email, we're going to have organization. Remember, this is not mandatory. All right. We're getting there. About 3 more to go, 3 or 4 more. Okay, so next. We're going to have that date added. And I'm going to run out of room here, so let me move this over. So that will say something like date added, and then it'll have like today's date at, and then the current time. Something like that. All right. Again, we're almost done. We got a couple more of these to go. Actually, one more, but it's complex. Right? Gotta learn to spell, don't I? So this will be our edit button. Okay. Under that, we're going to have another one that looks like it, and it will be our delete button. So let me copy this down. So this will say delete. And so will this. And lastly, we will need our home button. All right, so taking this one from the top, this will be our individual details for an individual contact. So in other words, this will be when we come in here and we click on the first name or last name, which are hyperlinked for one of our people. All right, and it'll bring this up. We'll either have an edit button where we can edit them, a delete button where we can get rid of them, or a home button where we can go back to our home page. So it's a big unordered list. First, we have their first name and their last name. So name, first name, last name. All right. Then we've got their phone number. Then we have their email. Then we have the organization they belong to. Then we have the date they were added. And then we have the buttons at the bottom. So again, all that information is exactly what I showed you in here. Name, phone, email, category, organization, and date added, and our 3 buttons. So this should allow us to now, if we go in back in here and I do a file save all and I run this, I should now be able to click on a contact, first name or last name, and it should bring us to their details. First name. Okay, it says details was not found. Something is screwed up. Okay, we'll have to look. This was details, but it's telling us it didn't find it. So let's look. There's our edit. This is our details. What did we do here? Okay, what is this? Where are we, so to speak? Okay, I put all this stuff into the edit. That is wrong. This shouldn't be in edit. This should be in details. So let me rename this. No, I don't want to delete it. To rename it as details.cshtml. Okay, now let's see if that works. All right, it says details was not found. Well, something is still screwed up. Contact, details. Let me do a file save all, And now let's go in here and let's add the edit and the delete. Now there's nothing in here. This is all garbage, so we get rid of all that. So we've now got a details and edit, and we need a delete as well. All right, and again, that's just garbage. So let's do a file, save all. And there's our details. Okay. If we click delete, well, it didn't do anything. That isn't good, so we'll have to look at that. Well, the good news is it didn't get rid of it, so okay, we'll look at that. We'll fix it in just a moment, okay? All right. Let's look at that delete. I'm sorry, that edit here, the details with the delete in it. Okay. Well, we didn't write a delete routine yet, so we will. Let's first write, yeah, we'll do the delete now. That's totally fine. We'll do the edit after that. So at model, we're going to delete a single contact or attempt to. This will be a very simple form. And we will first have a hidden field in there. And that hidden field will have in it, all right, that hidden field will have in it our contact ID. All right. Then after that, we'll have a paragraph that says, do you really want to delete question mark. All right. That's basically saying, do you really want to delete that person? All right. And then we will come in here and we will put in a button. Type equals submit. Class equals BTN dark. And this will be, yes, we do want to delete the person. All right. And then right next to that, we'll have a hyperlink that will make look like a button. Now, I'm not going to physically attempt to delete a record. I'm not going to try. But I just want to see if this looks the way it's supposed to now. Well, this comes up. Let me check on my time again. So if I click on Dolores Del Rio and I say I want to delete her, it says, do you really want to delete Dolores Del Rio? Not yet, not right now. Okay, so I'm going to say no, no, and it brings me back to where she was. Okay, that's all good. That's all working. So let's stop the run. Let's do a file save all. Let's quickly look at what was in this. So this is we've now looked at the delete and the details. I think edit's the one we still have to do, correct? Yes, it is. So this delete, add model contact, because it's a single contact. We put in delete contact for our title, and we've got a form. That form brings in the contact ID as a hidden field, and we ask, are you sure you really want to delete, for example, Jeff Scott? All right. And then there's a button that says yes. That'll submit it. And there's another one that says no. That'll send you right back to where you were. Okay. We already looked at the details, so I went through that one with you already. So let's build the edit. Okay. Again, it'll be an at model contact. This one's important because it's either going to say add contact or it's going to say update contact based on what that action was. All right. This is where we could have errors. So we're going to add a validation summary right here. Below that, we're going to put in a form. We will again bring in as a hidden field our contact ID. Whenever it turns red like that, you probably missed an equal sign, and that's what I did. All right. Now we've got to put in our stuff. This will take a few minutes, but we're going to start with first name, last name, phone, and email. Okay. Now, and the way this one is set up is I can now copy this and put it in there for first name, for last name, for phone, and for email. So let me do this. So that's first name, last name, phone, and email. Of course, I've got to change all these. So this will become a last name. This will become phone. And this will become email. All right, about half done. Now we have to handle the category, which is going to be a little bit more complex. The reason it will be a little more complex is category we're going to bring in as a drop-down list. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here and put in an open and close div. That's going to be for this. All right, we'll do that in just a second. Underneath that is going to be organization. So that's fine. But let's go in here and let's fix this one up for our category. Now we will use a for each to fill up our select list of categories. Should be everything in there. Then our organization, as I mentioned, and we've got about 10 or 15 more lines to type in here. So let's put those in and then we'll run it and take a look at it. We're doing an add view bag dot action here. This is kind of neat. We are filling up the text on the button with either the word add or the word update. And we're doing it based on the action attribute that we set via ViewBag ourselves just a few minutes ago. If it's an edit, all right, we'll do this. Otherwise, we're going to do this. All right. We should be able to start performing some CRUD operations now. Now, when I did this in class earlier, I had a problem with the category ID. Let's see if we still do. All right, so add a contact. Let's add me. Oh, and you can see somehow this button got all jazzed up, but that's okay. It still says the category field. It's not recognizing us putting in a category, and I don't know why. Doggone it. All right, can we come in here and can we edit this? Let's make her an other. Right? The organization field is not required, so that might be an error we put in, and it still doesn't like category. Good gravy. All right, let's go back and quickly, because we're almost finished here. Let's look at this first so you can see this. This was the edit.cs HTML file. All right. We said add model contact because it's a single contact. This view bag action is either going to say add contact or it's going to say edit contact. Okay. We put in a validation summary. So if we do run this and we leave all of these blank, we leave everything blank and we click that. All right. We get these errors. Organization was not supposed to be mandatory. What does that mean? That means I'm going to go back into our model and for organization, we didn't have a required there. So why is it requiring it? Well, that's interesting. It told us that we must, if you notice this, no, look, organization does not have a decorator on it. But if we run this and we leave the organization blank, I don't know what the heck is going on with that button either. Okay, it doesn't like this, so edit contact. I'm going to cancel that. Well, there's only one more thing I really want to do in here, so I want to quickly show you the way that the edit should look. And that's in here. First, before I do that, let me check our view imports. That looks good, so I don't have to do anything with that. And we're going to rewrite our layout file in just a moment. All right, so under shared here, layout. This is way too big. I'm going to knock this, what's in here, down. So it's only going to be about 10 lines or so. All right. But first, let's take a quick look at the edit. Again, validation summary at the top. All right. We had this for the first name, for the last name, for the email. This was our category. Like I said, it still isn't like something in there, and I don't know why. This is our organization. All right. If it's an edit, and we cancel, we want to go back to the details method in our contact view. If it's an add and we click cancel, we want to go back to the home page. Okay. Let's quickly finish up our layout. All right. Now, I'm not even doing anything. I could actually remove most of these things in here, but that's okay. Let's change this to view big title. Like that. And we don't need this contact manager on here, really. Get rid of that. And this does not have to be in double quotes. Okay. So in our body, all right, we're going to have a header. This is going to be the Jumbotron. It's main, not mail. So we cut that down to about 20 lines where it was 70 or 80. Okay. So there it is. All right. And again, if we attempt to add a contact, and I'm going to try it again with me. Why does that button look like that? I don't know. Organizate, no, it's not required. Please select the category, even though we did. Well, let's see. Category is required. It's not grabbing the category. And it says that organization field is required. I don't know where it's getting that from because they never put that in there. I have to find it because it has to be in here someplace. So can we do this? My guess is that the delete is going to work. All right, so if we run this, my guess is the delete will work. So if we click on here and we choose delete, it says, do you want to delete? If I say yes, she'll be gone. I don't want her to be gone. If I go to home, it goes to home. That works. So the ad has got something funky working with it. All right. There's something in the ad. But if I go to Dolores here and I click edit, it shows all the information. That's good. But I bet you if I try to change this from friend to work, it won't take it. It doesn't. And it says, again, that category is required. Now, the only way it should be saying that category is required, the only way that should be happening is if I go back to my model and I go to, let's go first to contact, and we do not say here that it is required. Notice we do not have a required tag. There's one for first name. There's one for last name. There's one for phone number. There's one for address. We do not have one for organization. Trying to figure out where it's grabbing that from. All right. So the other thing I'm going to look at in here is my contact context. I don't see anything in there. So what I'm going to do is this. All right. I'm going to ask you to try to figure out my errors. I'm going to figure them out myself, but I'm going to ask you to. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put what I've done right now, I'm going to put that out there. So what do you have to do? Well, you have to set it up because somehow in here, somehow, when you go to add a contact and you don't choose anything, first of all, why is that button that goofy size? I don't know. But if I click that, it gives me all my errors. Please enter first name, last name. Blah, blah, blah. This one, this error message that's in here, notice it doesn't say, please do this, like all the rest do except for this one. All right. So these are not giving my error messages. This is an error message from the system right there. There is something in that summary that is causing those to run. Now, what does that mean? Okay. What does that mean? Well, that means that once we put that summary in there and we choose all, it is thinking that every field is required, even though two fields are not required. All right, or one field. The organization field is not required. So this please enter contact category, notice I do put that in. It's now gone. So it still has this. So I think to fix this, this is what we're going to have to do. And that is, I'm going to have to remove. No, I want you to figure it out. All right, but I'll give you a hint. Go back and take a look at the earlier programs and we did a validation summary two ways. We did a validation summary all, and we used a span to do them on individual fields. And I think that's what we're going to have to do. And I think after we do that, everything is going to work. So I went back and redid this. It's 2 hours. When I did it the first time, it was 2.5 hours. But when I did it the first time, we had 2 15-minute breaks. So the timing on here is almost identical. Do what you can do with this one. Turn in what you've got by Sunday. We will take a look at it as a class on Monday. Thanks for watching. Have a nice weekend.